What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the after credit scene. We are talking all things Agatha all along. We're talking about episode 6 today. Whole lot of things went on. Really awesome flashback sequence. We're going to get into all the Easter eggs, all the amazing things that went on. But first, you know the drill. Hit the button, do the things, share this video all across the multiverse. We really appreciate it. So, in terms of my forecasts and predictions for the last 2 episodes, didn't really do a great job of predicting this one in terms of what I thought would happen specifically this episode. But in terms of my last 2 predictions, of all 14 predictions across both episodes, I'm actually 10 for 14, only missed 4 of them. Unfortunately, I missed 3 on this last episode. And so a lot more flashback sequence than I thought we were going to get, less time on the road, all those different things. However, what I feel like was one of the strongest episodes, and it only involved 2 of the main characters, but the backstory we got, the layering we got, the MCU references and all those different things really felt very well strung together, it deepened the plot of the story heading into episodes 7, 8, and 9. First off, the bar mitzvah at the beginning of the episode, where we get the life of Billy Kaplan. We get a sneak peek of that. In terms of the comic accuracy there, his parents, Jeff and Rebecca, are actually the Kaplan parents. They are Jewish. I thought the nod to the Jewish heritage of what would actually be Billy Maximoff's grandfather, Magneto, in the comics was also an interesting nod as well. The lines that Billy reads from during his bar mitzvah are actually lines from the Torah and things that would have been read at a bar mitzvah, so nothing really crazy there Easter egg wise. Several things that went on as we moved through the episode, getting to see the hex from a different perspective, people being asked to leave, to go home because they didn't know what was going on, finding out later on that the sword or shield covered up the hex as an Avengers exercise gone wrong was an interesting little touch. And then Billy dying in the car crash only to be possessed by Billy Maximoff's body, I thought was actually one of the things that happens in the comics, but to see that on screen and to see how they did that, and for Billy to actually be unsure of who he is and trying to figure out what's going on, specifically because, and this was one of the bigger twists of the episode, because Lilia is the one that put the sigil onto Billy, either out of fear or protecting this kid, because she knew something that he didn't, or knew something was going to happen. Maybe not exactly know what was going to happen, but she knew that he needed to be protected. I thought the acting there was really great for her to make the sigil, drop it in the suit jacket, and as soon as she does, she even forgets what was going on. It makes a lot of sense for why not only nobody on the road knows who he is until somebody, Agatha, figures out with her own powers who he is, and then he's actually revealed. It breaks the spell on him as well. He kind of figures out on his own without being able to understand it. And then the sigil is actually broken, and he has a lot more information as well when Agatha kind of outs him. And so, but even in those moments, if you go back to something like Multiverse of Madness, WandaVision, it adds a little layer of depth, even more so to the tragedy that kind of befalls Wanda. Not just that maybe she was taken over by the power of the Darkhold, but that she, like Billy said, he could feel Tommy. She could feel her children out there, but not actually understanding why or how. And she lands on this possibility of, well, maybe it's because there's multiple universes and maybe I can just take one from there, that she gets corrupted, that her truth, her positivity gets corrupted. If there ends up being a way to bring her back, and I have my own theory on that we'll throw out at the end here, then that's another wrinkle that might make it a little easier for audiences to forgive her. She is a great character too, so I think the forgiveness is not going to be really the hard part because they like her character. But in terms of plot devices and writing and being able to kind of blow through it, to get to some meatier stories. I think it was a really nice wrinkle to add to the story. Little things that went on as we moved through this episode. Billy's boyfriend texting him and saying, "You are my heart," but it written with the black heart emoji, I think really clicked in people's heads that the black heart was not Rio, which was a really awesome misdirect early on, but actually Billy, because Billy, nobody knew his name. Lilia didn't know his name, so she wrote down black heart. And so maybe that was some premonition that she had. She was able to see that from whatever muddled memory she had, and so she knew that they needed that. The more interesting part to that is if Lilia wrote down 5 names, Rio's name was not one of them. They needed a green witch, but it was not, whether Agatha just overlooked that name and everybody, myself included, thought that the other name was the Black Heart name. For whatever reason, we don't get a mention of Rio other than Agatha either misinterpreting the Black Heart or reading Rio's name and saying we don't need her, and getting Miss Heart instead. Also interesting that Rio still has not appeared. There's an interaction on the road right after the last puzzle that we saw in episode 5, and Rio is still nowhere to be found. If she truly is Lady Death, then walking the road with Death, looking for Death, all these different Easter eggs that popped up really lend themselves to what's going on there. It would also make sense if Rio is somehow after Billy, if Rio is there because Billy broke the rules and Lady Death did not get Billy Kaplan. And so it would set up a really interesting back and forth at the end of the series where Agatha has to protect Billy from Rio, and Billy has to protect Agatha from the Salem 7. That the son of Agatha's archenemy ends up saving her from the children whose parents she killed whenever she was in Salem all those years ago. It's just an interesting irony, and I think that might be where we're headed. We'll talk more about that in some other forecast episodes as we go on. But as we move through this story of Billy and we get a lot of this backstory here, the Easter eggs in his room are probably, just with all of our forecasts where I've said pay attention to these clues, his room is chock full of all the Easter eggs. Now, before we get into some of them, it's probably easy enough to assume that the set designers took all the different pieces and elements from all the other sets that they designed, the picture frames from the other puzzles, the background art and the games from certain other challenges on the road, and just put them all in his room. Whether it actually means anything or not, we can speculate all day long, but I think it's far easier to say that all of these different Easter eggs that we see in his room are definitely things on the road, because the Witch's Road kind of morphs itself into whatever is necessary for the witches that are on it, which would actually bring up some more interesting questions rather than just what are the writers trying to tell us and the director trying to tell us by putting all these Easter eggs in. Are they giving us foreshadowing? And a more interesting question is, if all of these Easter eggs that we find in Billy's room are on the road, what is the road trying to do? And if the road is morphing itself and changing itself to accommodate the needs of the coven or the people on it, are there things there that the road knows about Billy, or things that it is pulling more from Billy's experience than it is anything else? To me, that's a much more intriguing question, and I think one that could be answered in a variety of ways as the show goes on. But in Billy's room, we see all kinds of movie posters. There's a Goonies poster that actually doesn't say Goonies. It says the Goofballs, which Disney has the rights to. So I don't know why they would change the name unless it was done to maybe hint that this is another universe, which would be a really eagle-eye catch if that's what ends up happening. Who knows that to be true or not? It may or may not. But it would be an interesting, it was in front of our face the whole time. So, Goonies movie poster that actually says the Goofballs. There are Wizard of Oz posters everywhere, which I think in Wizard of Oz references in terms of little characters and books. I think that's probably a much more foreshadowing piece than anything else, because we're going to get an episode where all the characters are dressed like that. And I think maybe the Wizard of Oz himself, who's behind the curtain pulling all the strings, may be a big reveal at the end that we're not ready for. There were movie posters from the movie The Craft, movie about witches, particularly a witch that goes out for all this power and ends up having to be bound by all the other witches. There were Evanescence band posters from their album Fallen, which has a whole lot of references to witch type things, Bring Me to Life, My Immortal, all these kind of different song titles that could be very interestingly used in the future. Like I said, there's a Ouija board in there. There's a lot of other board games. There's a painting that looks really out of place, but it ends up being, I don't know exactly where the painting came from, but that style of painting with the man sitting at a desk with a bunch of books, writing in them, and a skull off in the corner, is very reminiscent of a lot of paintings about alchemy and alchemists and those kind of things. If you look up that on Google, you'll find a lot of paintings that look eerily similar to the one that's in Billy's room. And then another reference, at least I think, all of the different elements at the end of the show, in the credits, are actually foreshadowing and elements of Billy's search to figure out who he is. Highlighting things on the road, how to walk down the road, the hex itself, and all these different pieces that him researching witches are really just pieces of his research as he's trying to figure out who he is. And so I thought that was really clever as well, to kind of throw all that in there at the same time. I would venture to guess that there are some elements of it that don't belong to Billy, but belong to other things, because Jock Schaefer and those guys really like to throw some of those different things in there. In terms of the storyline, I thought it was really great to see what Billy saw when he came to get Agatha out of the spell cast by Wanda, to see from his side what was actually going on when Agatha thinks she's in a room interrogating a suspect. She's actually in her pajamas in her house with a water sprayer as her gun, interrogating him as to what he's doing there, and Billy being able to point out the pictures and the painting on the wall as Agatha starts coming out of that spell, only to still not know who he is because of the sigil that's on him, kind of the spell inside the spell, so to speak. And as Agatha comes out of it, one thing I noticed through this whole episode, and I'm interested to see how it moves forward into episode 7, 8, and 9, is until Agatha got some of her power back in episode 5, and she has this interaction where the sigil is broken, I feel like you didn't actually get the real version of Agatha. You got this kind of sing-songy, playful, jokey version of Agatha, not necessarily one that's trying to manipulate the situation, but just no pretense, no cover-up, no faking niceties. The seriousness in her voice and the directness of the character that Kathryn Hahn chose to play it that way seemed a lot more like the real Agatha, instead of this goofy, possibly bound by the sigil and powerless version of her. And as she starts getting some of that back, the real version of her starts coming through. I really thought that was an interesting choice. I'm interested to see if that continues on forward, because it's always felt very intentional to me. I'm really curious what you guys think about that. Maybe I'm just kind of making that up. And then, but to see that spell with Agatha and Billy from the other side was a really, really awesome moment, and it kind of brought those questions forward for me as the episode progressed. Last thing I want to talk about, and it was a really awesome reveal. It was a really great cameo, and it actually answered a few questions that you really didn't need answered, but I actually thought brought some interesting closure to the character, was the return of Ralph Bohner. To get to see him as the Reddit guy who has all the conspiracy theories and knows what really went on, for Billy and his boyfriend to be able to go and talk to him And Ralph not only tells them all the horrors and things that Agatha made him do, like killing Sparky. You find out that Agatha forced him to do that, which made Agatha seem even worse. But the one that really got me was they call him, oh, you're Ralph Boner, and he says, Randall, actually. My name is Randall. Seeing him having a different name lends even more credence to the fact that he's Evan Peters playing a totally different character in the MCU. And I think maybe being able to put that to rest for some people. I was one of them that thought maybe it's a multiversal thing. Maybe he doesn't really know who he is, that there's something else there rather than just, as Jock Schaefer actually said, and I chose not to believe, that Agatha being able to use that character, Agatha being able to use a different character that Wanda believed was her brother, and Jock Schaefer's choice to use Evan Peters, a version of Quicksilver, was intentionally done to put the audience in the same position that Wanda was in, which is one of grief, where we see what we want to see, that we feel the things that we want to feel because the grief tells us to feel that. I thought actually was a really excellent choice. Props to the writers and the directors on that. But this was kind of the nail in the coffin for those theories to say, no, Ralph Boner is really just, that's who he is. His name's Randall. He is not a Maximoff. He is not Quicksilver. None of those things. And so he's not coming back. He's gone in the MCU unless there's some other crazy banana ways to bring him back. I personally think we're going to get to the end of this series. Tommy is going to be our new speedster because Billy's going to find a way to bring him back. And there's your new speedster. So, however, very, very awesome scene, really funny. And the hex symbol at the end of the credits was reserved for Evan Peters. There's some theories going on out there that maybe that spot is reserved for other guest spots, and maybe we'll get Elizabeth Olsen in here somewhere. Would be really awesome. I think the show, if they did it without her, really stands on its own right now. It's quickly becoming a top 5 Marvel show for me in ways that I did not expect it to, but it's going to have to really finish strong in order to kind of seed itself up there for me. Really curious what you guys thought about it. There was a whole lot of Easter eggs, a whole lot of awesome things in this episode, and this was one of the first episodes, especially after last episode, that I thought, I can't believe I have to wait another week to get to whatever else is going to happen. Check out our forecast video for episode 7, which will drop on Monday. If you have any comments, please share them with us. A lot of you have subscribed recently, and we're really growing our community. Thank you guys for watching. Do the thing, click the buttons, share the video, and check out all of our other videos. We have tons of things you can sink your teeth into. And as always, guys, when the next one drops, we'll catch you right back here. Later.